All right, and we are back here on the GSMC football podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to now talk about the Eagles and their win over the Steelers. There was a lot of drama going into, uh, you know, well, really, there was a lot of drama in Philly during the week. You had the situation with A.J.Brown and Jalen Hurts, and how, A.J. Brown's just not happy with the offense. And both guys said that everything's good, but people aren't believing that. And look, I said on the show last week, I just think it's a guy that wants to be more impactful during the game, wants to get the ball more, and we've seen that plenty of times watching football all our lives. So that was my take on it. And the other thing too is, it's fine as long as they're winning games. Like, they'll figure it out, but if they start losing games and you have this situation happening, it's not going to be good. Because we saw what happened with the Eagles last year when things unraveled. We don't want that. I mean, they don't want it to happen again with a situation like this. But anyways, so A.J. Brown, he was involved yesterday. He was involved. You had two receivers on the Eagles go for over 100 yards in this game. A.J. Brown had 8 receptions for 110 yards and a touchdown. Devontae Smith had 11 receptions for 109 yards and a touchdown as well. And Jalen Hurts, 290 yards passing, 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. So, I said it. Other people in the media were saying it as well. We got to see this passing game be better. And Jalen Hurts, first thing he said in the media, to the media when he got to his press conference, I think he said something along the lines of, "Is that what you guys wanted?" or something along the lines of that. And yeah, no, he was good yesterday. And the Eagles' running game wasn't, it wasn't bad, but it was, they still had over 100 yards rushing. Saquon Barkley only had 65 yards on the ground. Jalen Hurts had 45 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Kenneth Gainwell had 20 yards on the ground. But you know what, they did enough. And the Steelers, look, this is kind of a game that shows me what could happen in the playoffs, because this could have been a statement win for them. And they did hang around for a little bit. The defense, did the best they could, but ultimately the Eagles are just a better team here. Now, the Steelers, they were kind of shorthanded yesterday because they didn't have George Pickens, and they definitely missed him in this game. And the Steelers had opportunities in this game as well, but there was the turning point of the game was in the second half. It was 20-13 Eagles, and Russell Wilson completes a pass to Calvin Austin for 31 yards. They get down to the Eagles' 26-yard line, and actually no, Russell Wilson ended up fumbling on that. But Najee Harris also had a fumble too. And I'm trying to see where. Maybe it was was it in the fourth quarter? I thought it was this. Oh, actually no. So I guess that counted as the Russell Wilson fumble. It was a bad exchange between Russell Wilson and Najee Harris. Najee never had the ball, and it just bounced off of him, and it rolled, and the Eagles ended up recovering it. And they could have tied the game there. So instead, then the Eagles take that. They go 13 plays, 74 yards down the field, and Jalen Hurts, scores from 1 yard out the tush push to make it 27-13, and that was really it. But also from that game as well, and this was across the league too, you had T.J.Watt getting hurt in this game towards the end. He rolled his ankle, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be long term. I'm seeing some headlines here. Not long term, probably good for playoffs at least. But that's the last thing the Steelers need right now. T.J. Watt is so important to this defense, and you see how the defense plays when he's not out there. They're a completely different unit. And I've said since I started doing these shows, is he's the quarterback of the defense. And you saw, and I just saw when he forced a fumble yesterday, Jalen Hurts was scrambling around, and T.J. Watt was like away from the play, and then all of a sudden he comes over and just knocks the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands, and the Steelers ended up recovering that. I mean, he's a one-man wrecking crew. But, if the Steelers lose him for an extended period of time, and especially with the schedule that they got coming up, because you have a very important game with the Ravens next week, because now they picked up a game on you. The Steelers are 10-4, Ravens are 9-5. Like, can't lose that game, and that's in Baltimore. The Ravens could definitely overtake the Steelers for the division. And then after that, you got the Chiefs. Now, we'll see what happens with Patrick Mahomes and whether he's going to be playing in that game or not. I would think he is going to, but we'll see. And then you got the Bengals to finish up the season at home. Those are a tough. That's a tough 3-game stretch there. So, the Steelers, they're going to have to figure it out if it's without T.J.Watt. But, yeah, so to kind of go through it, Eagles went up 3-0 early in the game. They scored 3 points on their first possession. Steelers punted on their second possession. Actually, they punted on their first 3 possessions, really. They did end up getting points because the Eagles fumbled on the punt. Cooper DeJean ended up fumbling, so they turned that into 3 points. That made it 3-3. But then the Eagles, they went right down the field, scored a touchdown to make it 10-3. Then they were up 17-3. Steelers then put together an 11-play, 70-yard drive. Russell Wilson connected with Pat Freiermuth. He continues to produce. Eagles then punted, and then the Steelers got 3 points before the end of the half. Chris Boswell, a 49-yard field goal. So the Steelers were still in this game. But then the Eagles went up 20-13. The Najee Harris fumble happens, and that kind of just changed the game. Eagles then capitalized on that to make it 27-13, and then nothing happened in the fourth quarter. Steelers got shut out in the second half. And again, this is something that I worry about going into the playoffs, because when you play some of these better teams, you can't have this happen. And if the Steelers have to go on the road in the playoffs, I really don't give them a good chance. I don't, because you're probably going to have to go up against... Well, if they could at least get a home playoff game, like if they could somehow hold on and win this division, then I give them at least a chance to move on to the next round. But if you got to be a wild card team, I don't trust them. I don't trust them in the playoffs, because if they got to go on the road, if they're the top, let's say if they're the top wild card team, you're probably playing. You're playing the Texans. That's a tough game. The Texans, they won yesterday, but that offense is kind of taking a step back this year. Well, C.J. Stroud's taking a little bit of a step back this year, so you could win that. But if you got to go on the road against Buffalo or Kansas City, I just don't see them winning. I don't see them winning. So it's important that the Steelers hold on and, get this 3 seed here, keep the division lead in their hands, because if they're a wild card team, we could see more of the same like we've seen in years past. And like I've said, I think they could beat everybody. I think they could beat anybody, but I think they could lose to anybody. But the Eagles, they're just a better team. That's really all you could say. At this point, they're just a better team. And, I think it was very important that, they got this win how they got it, because it wasn't relying on Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley didn't have a monster game. He had a couple of good runs, but, Saquon's not going to have a good game every week. So it's going to be up to Jalen Hurts and these pass catchers to get it going, and they did yesterday against a good Steelers defense. It's a good Steelers defense that they're playing against, and they got it done. So if they could do that in the playoffs, they could go all the way. Even with the passing game struggling like it has, I still believe that they can. And now you're tied with the Lions for the 1 seed. And the Lions right now are vulnerable. They're banged up on defense, so, they could maybe drop another game. Who knows? But Eagles just got to keep stacking those wins. And they still got the Giants one more time. They got the Commanders. I forget who else they play. I have to look up who else they play. But, the Eagles, they should, finish with... Okay, so they actually, they had the Cowboys. That's right. All right, so they finish up against the NFC East. 2 out of the 3 games they're at home. Commanders are playing better. Jaden Daniels, well, he looked good in the first half, but then kind of got shut down in the second half, and the Saints actually almost came back and won that game. But Eagles should finish with at least 14 wins. Maybe they go 3-0 to finish out the season, get to 15-2. The Commanders game is the toughest game left on the schedule. But I think they should at least go 2-1. They could definitely go 3-0, but I'm going to say at least 2-1. But if they go 3-0 and the Lions drop another game, all of a sudden, Super Bowl goes through Philly. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But that was a big win for them. Again, got the passing game going. Jalen Hurts, look, what are you going to do on that fumble? It's T.J.Watt. He's incredible. But, no, that was a good win. And the other thing, too, is the defense. That's been a major part of this success for the Eagles this year, is their defense, which I said was going to be a unit that was going to improve this year. And, the draft picks and free agency, and some of the younger players developing, it's worked. And also the change of defensive coordinator, it's worked. It's a solid unit. This is a solid team. And they definitely could go all the way and they can win the whole thing. I really do believe that. It would not shock me if we see the Eagles playing in February. And I said going into the year that with the addition of Barkley, improving the defense, and of course what you still have already there with all the talent on offense, this team could be as good as it was a couple years ago. And right now, looks like they might finish with a record even better than a couple years ago. So we'll see how it goes, but that was an important win for them. A.J.Brown, right after he scored the touchdown, he went and celebrated with Jalen Hurts to show everybody, like, hey, everything's good. Because that's what, people do. They try to, take things and, make stories. And there probably is stuff going on. But I don't think it's as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. Now, again, if the Eagles started losing games, then, yeah, this would be magnified. But they're winning games, and yesterday everybody was happy. A.J. Brown contributed, got Devontae Smith back, which is huge. You've had him back the last couple games, but just still, having both of those guys on the field at the same time is very important. And Jalen Hurts played well. So, all around, good win for them. Steelers got to get back in the win column next week. It's a big game with the Ravens. That's on Saturday. So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again, tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about Patrick Mahomes' injury. We'll talk about the Chiefs' win over the Browns and what the concern level is for the Mahomes injury. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.